It all started on an ordinary evening, just another quiet night in the Thompson household. Lisa, a devoted mother, was tidying up the kitchen, humming softly to herself when she noticed something odd. Her 17-year-old daughter, Emily, had been glued to her phone more than usual lately, smiling at the screen, whispering in hushed tones whenever Lisa walked by. At first, she brushed it off as typical teenage behavior. But something about Emily's secrecy didn't sit right. The late-night messages, the sudden change in attitude, the way she nervously locked her phone whenever Lisa was near it all felt off. Lisa had always prided herself on the close bond she shared with her daughter. They talked about everything. At least, that's what she thought. But now, there was a distance, an invisible wall Emily had built, and Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that her daughter was hiding something big. Determined to find out the truth, Lisa began paying closer attention. She noticed how Emily's mood would shift from pure excitement to anxious distress in a matter of moments. The way she'd disappear into her room for hours, emerging only when absolutely necessary. The way she barely ate at dinner, distracted by something or someone on her phone. One night, as Lisa gathered the laundry, she found a small piece of folded paper tucked inside Emily's jeans pocket. Her heart pounded as she opened it. What she saw sent a chill down her spine. A name, a meeting time, a place she didn't recognize. Who was this person? And why was Emily keeping it a secret? Lisa's mind raced. Was this just innocent teenage romance, or was it something far more dangerous? Fear clawed at her as worst-case scenarios flooded her thoughts. She knew she had to act fast, but how? Should she confront Emily directly and risk pushing her further away? Should she go to the meeting spot herself and see what was really going on? The more she thought about it, the more she realized whatever was happening, she wasn't ready for the truth. But that truth was coming, whether she liked it or not. And when she finally uncovered the shocking reality of her daughter's secret relationship, it left everyone speechless. Lisa could barely focus the rest of the night. Her mind replayed the name and meeting place over and over, trying to piece together what her daughter could be involved in. Emily had always been a good kid, responsible, kind, and never one to break the rules. Sure, she had her teenage moments, but nothing that ever gave Lisa a real reason to worry. But lately, something had shifted. Emily had become more distant, distracted, and oddly defensive anytime Lisa asked about her day. At first, Lisa chalked it up to school stress or maybe a fight with a friend. But now, with this mysterious note in her hands, she realized there was more to the story than she'd imagined. She thought back to the past few weeks, searching for any clue she might have overlooked. Emily's best friend, Sophie, had been coming around less, and when Lisa had casually asked about it, Emily brushed it off with a vague "she's been busy." Then there was that Saturday night, when Emily had said she was going to a friend's house, only to come home looking shaken, her usual bright energy replaced by an uneasy quiet. Lisa had asked if everything was okay, and Emily had forced a smile, saying she was just tired. But Lisa knew her daughter too well. Something had happened that night. And now, she was certain it had something to do with whoever had written that note. Lisa debated what to do next. Part of her wanted to march straight into Emily's room and demand answers, but deep down, she knew that would only push her daughter further away. She needed to be smart about this, to gather more information before making a move. So, she started watching Emily's behavior even more closely. That's when she noticed the phone calls always late at night, whispered conversations that ended the second Lisa walked past her room. And then there were the disappearances. Emily had started going out more often, claiming she was studying at the library or hanging out with friends. But when Lisa called Sophie's mom to casually check in, she was met with confusion. Sophie hadn't seen Emily in over a week. That was the moment Lisa's concern turned to real fear. If Emily wasn't with Sophie, then where was she going? And more importantly, who was she with? The more Lisa thought about it, the more unsettling possibilities crossed her mind. Could it be an older guy? Someone she met online? Or was she involved in something even more dangerous? The idea made Lisa's stomach churn. She had always warned Emily about the risks of talking to strangers, about being careful with who she trusted. But what if she hadn't listened? What if she had gotten herself into something she couldn't get out of? Lisa knew she couldn't sit back and do nothing. She had to figure this out before it was too late. The following day, she decided to test the waters. Over breakfast, she casually mentioned that she and Emily should have a mother-daughter day soon, just the two of them. Emily hesitated, barely looking up from her phone. "Maybe," she muttered, her voice distant. Lisa studied her carefully. There was something in her daughter's eyes, an uneasiness, as if she were carrying a secret too big for her to handle alone. That's when Lisa made up her mind. She wasn't going to wait for Emily to come to her. She was going to take matters into her own hands. And so, that evening, while Emily was in the shower, Lisa did something she never thought she'd do. She picked up her daughter's phone and started scrolling. What she found made her heart stop. That evening, as Lisa held Emily's phone in her hands, her pulse raced. She knew she was crossing a line, invading her daughter's privacy, but the nagging fear in her gut left her no choice. Scrolling through Emily's messages, she found mostly harmless chats with classmates until she saw a conversation marked with only a single initial, RR. Her hands tightened around the phone as she clicked on the thread, only to find that most of the messages had been deleted. What remained were scattered fragments of conversation, enough to send a chill down Lisa's spine. "We can't keep this a secret forever. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Meet me tomorrow. Usual spot." Lisa's heart pounded. Whoever this R was, Emily was clearly caught up in something she didn't want her mother to know about. But before Lisa could read further, the screen suddenly went black. The phone had locked. Her fingers trembled as she tried to unlock it, but Emily's password had changed. Lisa cursed under her breath. She had been so close. Setting the phone back down exactly as she had found it, she forced herself to act normal as Emily emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming softly to herself. Lisa's mind raced. Should she ask Emily about R? Pretend she knew nothing? She decided to wait. She needed more before she confronted her daughter. The next morning, Lisa woke up, determined to get answers. She had memorized the time and location from the note she had found in Emily's pocket. If Emily wasn't going to tell her the truth, she would find it herself. But as she reached for her nightstand drawer, where she had hidden the note, her blood ran cold. It was gone. She tore through the drawer, searching every corner, but it had vanished without a trace. Had Emily discovered it and taken it back? Or an even more terrifying thought, had someone else been in the house? The idea sent shivers down Lisa's spine. She tried to stay calm as she went about her morning routine, but a growing sense of paranoia crept in. Was she overreacting? Or was someone actively trying to keep her from uncovering the truth? As she poured herself a cup of coffee, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions. Let it go." Lisa nearly dropped her coffee. She reread the message, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't just teenage secrecy anymore. This was something else, something bigger. Someone was watching her. Someone didn't want her to keep digging. She quickly scanned the room, her breath coming faster. Was she being paranoid? Or was she in real danger? She wanted to call Emily downstairs right that second, demand an explanation, but she forced herself to think. If she pushed too hard, Emily might shut down completely. No, she needed to be careful. If someone was trying to silence her, it meant she was getting close to something they didn't want her to find. And that meant she couldn't stop now. But then, just as she was piecing things together, another realization hit her like a brick. There was only one other person who knew she had found that note. someone she had trusted completely. And if that person had betrayed her, she was in far more danger than she had ever imagined. Lisa's hands trembled as she set her phone down, her mind spiraling with possibilities. The message, "Stop asking questions. Let it go," played over and over in her head like a warning siren she couldn't silence. Someone was watching her. Someone knew she was getting too close. But how? Had Emily told someone? Had Lisa been too obvious in her suspicions? Or was there something much more sinister at play? Every shadow outside the window, every car that slowed near her house, suddenly felt like a threat. Her once safe home now felt like a glass box, transparent, exposed, vulnerable. She tried to keep herself together, but the moment Emily came downstairs for breakfast, Lisa knew she couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. Emily barely acknowledged her, grabbing a piece of toast and glancing at her phone, as if the world beyond her screen was more real than the one she shared with her mother. Lisa wanted to ask her about the note, about the name RIE, about the late-night whispers and the lies. But then she remembered the missing note, the anonymous text. Someone had gone through her things. Someone had entered her home. If Lisa played her cards wrong, she might put Emily in more danger than she already was. Deciding to bide her time, Lisa tried to go about her day as normally as possible. But then, as she pulled out of the driveway, a sickening feeling washed over her. The same car, a dark sedan with tinted windows, was parked a few houses down. It had been there the night before too, and now, in the light of day, it still hadn't moved. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. Was she imagining things? Or was someone watching her every move? She hesitated before backing out, keeping her eyes trained on her mirrors. The car remained still. She pulled onto the main road, glancing behind her. It didn't follow. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe she was letting her paranoia take over. But then, later that afternoon, the car was there again, parked in a different spot, still watching. Lisa's breath came faster as dread coiled in her stomach. She wasn't imagining this. Someone was following her. She snapped a quick picture of the car on her phone, but when she zoomed in, the license plate was covered in dirt, unreadable. Her hands trembled as she debated calling the police. But what could she say? That a car had been parked on her street? That she had a bad feeling? They wouldn't take her seriously. And what if this wasn't about her at all? What if it was about Emily? Determined to get answers, Lisa decided to take matters into her own hands. That evening, after dinner, she casually mentioned that she would be running a quick errand. Emily barely reacted, distracted by whatever was on her phone. Lisa grabbed her keys, but as she stepped out into the night, she felt that eerie sensation of being watched. The air was heavy with silence, thick with something she couldn't name. She forced herself to act normal, walking to her car with steady steps. But her heart pounded as she started the engine, her fingers clenching the wheel so hard, her knuckles turned white. She drove aimlessly at first, taking turns at random, trying to shake the uneasy feeling crawling under her skin. But then, as she glanced in the rearview mirror, her blood ran cold. The dark sedan was there, trailing her at a careful distance. Not too close, but never too far behind. Lisa's breathing grew shallow. This was real. Someone was following her. She gripped the wheel tighter, her mind racing. Should she drive straight to the police station? Try to lose them? Confront them? Her instincts screamed at her to stay calm, but panic was clawing at the edges of her sanity. Then, without warning, her phone buzzed. Another text. "You're making this worse for yourself. Turn back now." Lisa's stomach twisted painfully. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't paranoia. Whoever this was, they knew exactly where she was. They were watching her in real time. Heart hammering, she took the next sharp turn and floored it, weaving through back roads in a desperate attempt to lose the car behind her. But when she finally glanced in the mirror again, the sedan was gone, vanished, as if it had never been there at all. Lisa pulled into an empty parking lot, her hands shaking so violently she could barely put the car in park. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, trying to catch her breath. Every instinct in her body screamed that she was in way over her head. This wasn't just about Emily's secret anymore. This was something bigger, something dangerous. And then, as she lifted her head, her breath caught in her throat. A figure stood under the dim glow of a street lamp, just a few yards away, watching her. Lisa's blood turned to ice. Whoever they weren't just following her anymore. They were waiting for her. Lisa's body locked in place, her breath shallow, her pulse hammering in her ears. The figure under the street lamp stood eerily still, just far enough away that their features were obscured by darkness. She wanted to believe it was a trick of the light, some stranger who just happened to be there, but every instinct told her otherwise. They weren't just standing there, they were waiting for her. Watching. The tension in the air was suffocating. Lisa forced herself to move, gripping her phone with trembling fingers, ready to call for help. But just as she lifted it to dial, the figure took a step forward. And then another. Lisa's stomach lurched. She fumbled for her keys, her hands slick with sweat, but before she could turn the ignition, a familiar voice cut through the night. "Mom." "Stop." Lisa froze, her mind struggling to process the impossible. The figure wasn't some faceless threat lurking in the shadows. It was Emily. Relief and confusion crashed over Lisa in equal waves. She threw the car door open, stumbling out into the cold air. "Emily? What are you doing here?" "How did you?" But before she could finish, Emily rushed forward, grabbing her mother's arm with a desperation Lisa had never seen before. "You have to stop looking into this," Emily pleaded, her eyes filled with fear. "You don't understand what's happening. You're making it worse." Lisa's head spun. Nothing made sense. Emily knew what was going on. She was the one warning her to stop. "Emily, talk to me," Lisa demanded, gripping her daughter's arms. "Who is us? Why are you sneaking around? Who's been following me?" Emily's face twisted with guilt, but before she could answer, something flickered in her expression, something Lisa hadn't seen before. Terror. Emily's gaze shot past Lisa's shoulder, and her entire body tensed. Lisa turned sharply, her breath catching in her throat. The dark sedan was back, parked at the edge of the lot, engine humming softly. Lisa barely had time to react before Emily yanked her backward. "Get in the car," she hissed. "Now." Lisa hesitated, but the sheer panic in her daughter's voice sent a chill down her spine. Without another word, they scrambled into the driver's seat. Lisa's fingers fumbled with the ignition, her pulse hammering as the engine roared to life. But before she could throw it into drive, the sedan's headlights flashed once, twice like a warning. And then, just as eerily as it had appeared, it slowly backed up, disappearing into the night. Silence filled the car, thick and suffocating. Lisa turned to Emily, demanding answers, but her daughter was already shaking her head. "You weren't supposed to get involved," Emily whispered, voice trembling. "I was trying to handle it, but now they know you're looking." Lisa's blood ran cold. "Who? Emily, who are they?" Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she hesitated, the weight of whatever secret she had been carrying threatening to crush her. And then finally, she spoke. "Mom, it was never about me." Lisa's stomach twisted. "What?" Emily swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "They've been after you this whole time." Lisa's breath caught, the world around her seeming to tilt on its axis. Every assumption she had made, every fear she had held about Emily's secret had been wrong. This wasn't about a teenage romance. This wasn't about rebellion or bad decisions. This was about Lisa. And whoever was behind it wasn't just trying to scare her. They were making sure she knew she was next. Lisa gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white as Emily's words settled in. "They've been after you this whole time." The world inside the car suddenly felt too small, suffocating, like the air itself had been sucked out. This wasn't about Emily's secret. It was about her. But why? Lisa had no enemies, no debts, no dangerous past. She was just a single mother trying to protect her daughter. So why was someone watching her, following her, warning her to stop digging? She turned to Emily, her voice hoarse. "What do you mean they're after me? Who are they? Tell me everything, right now." Emily's eyes darted to the rearview mirror, still paranoid that the sedan might return. She hesitated, as if deciding how much she could say without making things worse. "Mom, I can't explain everything yet," she admitted, her voice breaking. "But I found out something I wasn't supposed to know. And when I did, they didn't come after me." She swallowed hard, her fingers twisting together. "They came after you instead." Lisa's mind spun. None of this made sense. What could Emily possibly have uncovered that would put Lisa in danger? What had she stumbled into without even realizing it? And then, as if the universe itself was taunting her, Lisa's phone buzzed again. New message. Unknown number. Last chance. Walk away, or we make you disappear. Lisa's stomach lurched. There was no mistaking it now. This wasn't just intimidation. It was a threat. A direct, undeniable warning that whoever these people were, they weren't bluffing. She clenched her jaw, staring at the glowing screen. The safest choice would be to stop. To pretend she had never seen the messages, never found the note, never questioned Emily's secrecy. She could erase the texts, go home, lock the doors, and convince herself that ignorance was the best form of survival. But that was the thing. Lisa had never been the kind of person who backed down, especially when it came to protecting her daughter. And if these people thought they could scare her into silence, they didn't know her at all. Lisa exhaled shakily and looked at Emily, who sat curled in the passenger seat, knees pulled to her chest. "Do you trust me?" Lisa asked. Emily's face crumpled. "Of course I do." Lisa nodded, her decision made. "Then tell me everything. No more secrets. If I'm already in danger, I deserve to know why." Emily hesitated, but she must have seen the determination in Lisa's eyes, the kind of unshakable resolve that told her there was no turning back. With a slow, measured breath, Emily reached into her backpack and pulled out something small, wrapped in a crumpled paper napkin. She held it out with a shaky hand. Lisa took it, her fingers carefully unwrapping the napkin until something metallic caught the dim glow of the street lamp outside. A USB drive. Lisa's pulse pounded in her ears. "What is this?" Emily's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "It's the reason they're after you." Lisa stared at the tiny device in her palm as dread coiled deep in her stomach. She had no idea what was on it, but she knew one thing for certain: there was no going back now. And whoever they were, they would do anything to make sure she never saw what was inside. Lisa's fingers trembled around the USB drive, her pulse thundering as she stared at the small, insignificant-looking object in her palm. It was absurd how something so tiny, so ordinary, could hold the key to whatever nightmare she and Emily had been pulled into. She had no idea what was on it, but one thing was clear: people were willing to kill to keep it hidden. Emily sat beside her, hugging her knees, her eyes darting anxiously between Lisa and the darkened street outside. The air inside the car was suffocating, thick with unspoken fears, unanswered questions. Lisa wanted to demand more, to make Emily explain everything, but a cold realization settled over her. Emily wasn't just scared. She was terrified. And whatever she had gotten mixed up in, she truly believed Lisa's life was on the line. Lisa's thoughts raced. If she wanted answers, there was only one way to get them. They had to see what was on the drive. But plugging it into her personal laptop felt reckless. What if it was being tracked? What if opening it triggered something even worse? No, she needed to be smart. Careful. She needed help. A sick feeling twisted in her stomach. There was only one person she could think of: Mark. Lisa hesitated, her mind rebelling against the idea. Mark was her ex-husband, a cybersecurity expert who had spent years working for private firms, dealing with classified systems and encrypted data. He was brilliant, capable, and completely untrustworthy. Their marriage had ended in an ugly web of secrets, and though he claimed he had changed, Lisa never believed it. She had spent years keeping Emily at a distance from his world, from his lies. But now, with danger closing in from all sides, she didn't have the luxury of choice. She turned to Emily, swallowing her pride. "We're going to your father." Emily's head snapped up, her face tightening with unease. "Dad?" "No. Mom, we can't." "We don't have time to argue," Lisa cut in, already pulling the car into gear. "If there's anyone who can figure out what's on this thing, it's him." Emily didn't argue again, which only made Lisa more uneasy. Why wasn't she fighting this? The drive to Mark's condo felt like an eternity, Lisa's paranoia growing with every shadow that flickered in her peripheral vision. Was someone following them? Watching? Had they already gone too far? By the time they pulled into the underground garage, Lisa's nerves were stretched so thin she could barely breathe. She parked near the elevators, scanning their surroundings before motioning for Emily to stay close. Mark answered the door on the second knock, his expression shifting from surprise to concern the moment he saw them. He looked different, leaner, sharper, his usual smugness dulled by something unreadable. "Lisa? Emily?" His gaze swept over them, taking in their tense expressions. "What's going on?" Lisa didn't waste time. She stepped inside, pulled the USB drive from her pocket, and placed it on the coffee table. "We need to know what's on this." Mark's brow furrowed, but as his gaze dropped to the drive, something changed in his face. His shoulders stiffened, his expression darkening in a way that made Lisa's stomach lurch. He knew something. Lisa's heart pounded. "Mark, what do you know?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then, in a low voice, he said, "Where did you get this?" Emily flinched. Lisa's pulse skyrocketed. She turned to her daughter, realization slamming into her like a freight train. Emily had never told her where the drive came from. She had assumed it was tied to Emily's secret relationship to this person. But what if it wasn't? Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper. "Emily, where did you get this?" Emily's hands clenched into fists, her face paling. I took it from Dad." The room spun. Lisa felt like the ground had been ripped out from under her. She turned back to Mark, whose expression was unreadable, his jaw tight. "I told you not to get involved," he muttered. Lisa's breath caught. Her voice cracked, realization dawning like a slow, suffocating horror. Mark had been involved in this from the start. Emily's voice wavered. "Mom, I didn't know what it was. I saw him hiding it. He was acting weird, making secret calls. I thought it was something personal. But then, when I looked into it, people started watching me, following me. And then you," she swallowed hard, guilt flashing across her face. "They must have thought I gave it to you. That's why they're after you, not me." Lisa's knees nearly buckled. She turned to Mark, her voice shaking with fury. "What the hell did you do?" Mark exhaled slowly, running a hand down his face. When he finally looked at Lisa, the guilt was there, but so was something else. Resignation. "This goes beyond us, Lisa," he said quietly. "Beyond you, beyond Emily. If you don't walk away now, neither of you will be safe." Lisa's chest heaved. Every instinct screamed at her to demand answers, to push him for the truth. But then, a sound. A car door slamming outside. Lisa's heart stopped. She didn't even have time to move before Mark's expression darkened further. It's too late. Lisa turned sharply toward the window, her blood running cold. Black SUVs pulling into the garage, doors opening, figures stepping out. They weren't just being followed anymore. They'd been found. Lisa's breath came in short, uneven gasps as she stared out the window. The black SUVs had pulled into the garage, their engines rumbling like an omen. Dark figures emerged, their movements sharp, precise, not random thugs, not ordinary criminals. These people were trained, methodical, and they weren't here to talk. Lisa whipped around to Mark, her pulse hammering. "What did you do?" Mark's jaw tightened. He glanced at Emily, then back at Lisa, something dangerous flickering behind his eyes. "I thought I could outmaneuver them," he said, voice low, steady. "But I underestimated how far they'd go. We don't have much time." Lisa's stomach twisted. "Who are they?" Mark hesitated, but before he could answer, the elevator dinged. Lisa felt her blood turn to ice. Footsteps echoed down the hallway outside. A slow, deliberate approach. The kind that sent a chilling message: they weren't in a hurry, because they knew no one was getting out. Emily let out a shuddering breath. "Mom." Lisa squeezed her daughter's hand, forcing herself to stay calm, to think. "Is there another way out?" she whispered. Mark shook his head. "They'll have covered every exit." Lisa's mind raced. Running was impossible. Fighting was suicide, which meant the only way to survive was to take control. She grabbed the USB drive from the table and clenched it in her fist. "Whatever's on this," she said, looking at Mark, "it's the only leverage we have." Mark nodded grimly. "And it's the reason they can't let us leave." A knock came, not a polite one. A sharp, 3-beat warning. Then a voice, smooth and composed. "Lisa." "Mark." "Open the door." Lisa's stomach lurched. They knew her name. Mark took a step toward the door, but Lisa grabbed his wrist. "No, you don't control this situation." "I do." Before he could argue, Lisa strode forward and yanked the door open. A man stood on the other side, dressed in a crisp black suit, his features calm but cold. He wasn't holding a weapon, but Lisa knew he didn't need one. The men flanking him, however, were armed, silent, watching. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Mrs. Carter, thank you for making this easy." Lisa lifted her chin, tightening her grip around the USB. "I don't think you'd be thanking me if you knew what I plan to do with this." The man's eyes flickered to her fist, amusement barely touching his expression. "You don't even know what's on it, do you?"